All right, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to officially welcome everybody to the Climate Solutions Prize web series, part 3, featuring Professor Itzhak Mizrahi from Gurion University. For those of you who have joined us for the previous 2, we welcome you back. And for those of you joining us for the first time today, we thank you for being here with us today. For those of you who have been following us, you're well aware of what the Climate Solutions Prize is. But for those of you joining us for the first time who were engaged by Professor Mizrahi's research, we're going to tell you a little bit about the Climate Solutions Prize. The Climate Solutions Prize, powered by JNF, or as it's better been known for in these days, CSP, aims to galvanize Israeli and now Quebec talent to address the climate crisis. CSP aims to support and inspire increased research and development for breakthrough climate solutions by rewarding the best and brightest and most innovative minds from across Israel and now Quebec through funding and the recognition of the prize. Very quickly, the initiative became an important clean tech platform, rallying all key players in the ecosystem: investors, entrepreneurs, NGOs, government, research and academics, major philanthropists, and many more around a common goal and collective collaborative approach. The initiative is a catalyst for bringing impactful, innovative solutions to the forefront at a fast pace. The Climate Solutions Prize in 2022 awarded over $1 million to researchers in Israel that was awarded at the Climate Solutions Festival that took place on October 26, 2022 in the Hulda Valley. Before words can only say so much, what we'll do is we'll take a moment and show you the event where Professor Mizrahi was awarded the inaugural prize of the Climate Solutions Prize. On October 26, 2022, over 1,000 participants took place at the Climate Solutions Festival held in the Hulda Valley. JNF Canada brought buses from JNF leadership, professionals, the Green Mission that brought a bus full of Canadian, American, and Dutch clean tech entrepreneurs to see the innovations being brought forth by Israel. Today, we're joined by Professor Mizrahi, who was one of the 3 inaugural winners of the Climate Solutions Prize. Professor Mizrahi joins us from Ben-Gurion University of the Negev that focuses on the potential we have to adapt and thrive in the changing environments. Inspired by its location in the desert, it aims to discover, create, and develop solutions to present-day challenges. BGU is committed to inclusion, diversity, and innovation in Israel, and it strives to extend Beersheba and the Negev's potential and its entrepreneurial spirit through the world. The recent established Goldman Sonfeld School for Sustainability and Climate Change leverages over 50 years of expertise on living and thriving in the desert into scalable solutions for people everywhere. BGU at a glance is 20,000 students, 800 senior faculty, 3 campuses, and 6 faculties, humanities and social sciences, health sciences, engineering sciences, natural sciences, business and management, and desert research. Today, we're also joined by our partners, BGU Canada, with chapters in Montreal, Ottawa, Toronto, Winnipeg, and Vancouver, and has been raising funds for BGU for close to 5 decades and is proud to support the David Ben-Gurion's vision for the Negev. For more information on BGU, you can visit bengurion.ca. And of course, today we're all here to listen to Professor Mizrahi. Itzhak Mizrahi is a professor at BGU leading the microbial egonomic group. The research of Professor Mizrahi constitutes a unique approach in the area of microbial ecology and gut microbiome. For those of you who have joined and listened, you know, the common word we've all heard was cow farts, which today we're actually going to put Professor Mizrahi on the spot to explain to us exactly what he's doing. His research interests constitutes fundamental basic questions related to microbial community assembly, but at the same time, the important impact on issues of food security and agricultural sustainability, aligning with the One Health approach. Specifically, some of his research related to ruminants is focusing on how to modulate and balance the complex microbial community residing in ruminants' guts to increase food security while decreasing environmental impact. Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, Professor Itzhak Mizrahi.
Thank you, Phil. Hello, everybody, and I'm happy for you guys to actually join and spend the time to hear us out. I will just share my screen and a presentation where I can actually explain a lot of the terms that we just heard. I just want to be sure that let's see, a second.
And for anybody who has any questions for Professor Mizrahi, we will be doing a Q&A session after his presentation. Please type in your questions in the chat box and we will address as many of them as possible.
So Phil, do you see the presenter?
You are good to go.
Good. So again, everybody, I am very glad that you joined. I will try to clarify why are we motivated to engage with this topic. But before we start, I will just start with a few thank yous. I will first start with the people that I care dearly about, which is the group of people that are actually doing the work. This is actually my group, and at the end of the day, I'm a paper pusher. And for the people that support us, and we start with the JNF Canada, Jeff Hart and Galit Levy that are not with us today, they're actually in Israel, and of course to the Climate Solution Prize Committee, and this whole venture that allow us to kind of push things forward and hopefully find a solution to this very burning question. So as Phil just mentioned, I'm coming from the Ben Gurion University, which is, to my opinion, the best university in Israel, and I think planet Earth, but this is my own, of course, subjective view. And I will discuss with you today some aspects of the projects that we are now engaged with, which is connected to the Climate Solution Prize, which is reducing greenhouse gas emissions and climate change by rational designs of ruminant microbiomes. So maybe we'll start by explaining these terms, ruminants microbiome and rational design of microbial communities. So in order to actually take forward this important topic, I will just explain what am I doing and what is the definition of my profession. As Phil said, I'm a microbial ecologist, and microbial ecologists are studying microbes and their interaction with each other and with the environment itself, exactly as you would do if you would be a zoologist on ecology that is studying zoology in the savannah. You would ask about the interactions between the lions and the impalas and how this could affect the overall ecosystem. For example, if you take out the lions, the impalas would eat most of the grass. Then you will have less photosynthesis, and vice versa. If you take out the impalas, the lions will die. So this type of interactions allow us to actually capture and understand how a community of different species live together. And that's exactly what we're doing when we're talking about microbial communities. The only difference is that we can not see them. They're very, very small. They are living in communities. So if you look at the different shapes over here, they are interacting, these different microbes, and they end up with a specific function. We'll discuss some of these functions today. And these functions could be changing as a function of which members of this community are either present or absent. And in the context of our discussion today, one of the main topics that my group is engaged with is understanding the interaction between the microbiome or the microbial community that resides in a specific place, we call it a microbiome, and with the host. The host could be a variety of different animal species, including human beings. And we know today that the changes in the community of the microbial community will directly affect the host. Because these two entities, the host itself and the microbiome, are interacting, and this interaction will change the physiology, the way the host actually perceives the environment and interacts with the environment, and changes in the host will accompany changes in the microbiome. And this type of interaction will affect the environment itself. And of course, the environment can, in an interchangeable manner, can affect the interaction between the host and the microbiome. So this is kind of to frame the notions that we discussed, that microbial communities of different species, their composition will affect their different hosts. Their hosts could be elephants, giraffes, chimpanzees, human beings, and of course, cows, which are our favorite research animals. And the reason for that is when we talk about the interaction between multicellular organisms or animals, including human beings, and their microbiomes, cows and sheep, which are ruminants, they represent the hallmark of host microbiome symbiosis. And the reason for that is that cows, unlike human beings or mice, cannot live without their microbes. They are totally dependent on their microbiome to digest their feed, and their microbiome cannot live without them. And the way it works is that once cows ingest the plant material that they eat, the plant material arrives to this very large component that we call the rumen. It's an enlargement of the esophagus that this occurred during evolution. And in this compartment that we call the rumen, they actually grow microbes on the ingested plant material that they actually forage or they in the field itself. So the plant materials will be composed from polymers like cellulose or hemicellulose or starch, and this will be degraded and fermented in a trophic-like levels. In other words, the way this plant material that is being ingested is metabolized by the microbe is utilized in different steps, from the polymers themselves to simple sugars like glucose, hexoses, and pentoses, and these are being fermented exactly as you ferment beer or bread into short chain fatty acids or small chemicals. And these small chemicals are being absorbed by the ruminants and are being used for their energy needs. Up to 70% of the energy that ruminants use in order to maintain themselves and give us milk and meat is coming from these fermentation products that are the outcome of microbial activity. During this process, microbes produce also hydrogen and also CO2. And these two are also converted in a microbial metabolism manner into a molecule that we call methane. This is a very important molecule because we all know that methane is being emitted to the atmosphere and is serving kind of as a layer that traps heat inside our atmosphere. And we'll discuss this a bit later. So it's very easy to imagine that if we control this process, this microbial process that is occurring in the ruminant's gut, we can actually control the amount of energy that is going towards milk production versus the amount of energy that is going towards emission of methane to the atmosphere. So this is a microscopic process that I just described for you, going from the ingestion of plant polymers and the degradation and fermentation by microbes into methane or short-chain fatty acid. But this microscopic process, if we look at it from the global point of view, we understand that it affects our life in a very robust manner. And this is just to kind of wrap our heads around it. This is the map of the world. And in brown, we see the areas that we grow livestock upon. It's about 25 to 30% of the arable land on planet Earth is being used in order to grow livestock upon. A lot of it is occupied by ruminants, like cows and sheep that we just discussed. The green areas are areas that we grow crops upon. About 25% of these crops are being fed into to ruminants in order to produce milk and meat to humanity. So the reason for this is that somehow in evolution, we discovered these animals that are able to take the energy that is stored in plant biomass and convert it into digestible food products that we can actually use, because like any other mammal, we cannot utilize the plant polymers or the straw that cows eat, but they can do that due to the amazing ability that their microbiome actually enables them. And once we discovered this ability of cows, we started growing them intensively. And today we have about 1.5 billion cows on planet Earth. And they, as you saw, occupy a lot of, or utilize a lot of these resources, but we highly depend on them because we are using a lot of this milk and meat in order to maintain ourselves. And if we look at the global population, we see that we are increasing in a very stable manner, but we always continue to increase. We are now about more than 7 billion people on planet Earth. And these people are, of course, being fed. This is the amount of milk that we consume. And as you can see, it's annually increasing. And together with the amount of milk that we consume, at the same time, as we discussed, these cows that are eating the plant material and provide this milk for us, they continue to produce methane, and or the microbiome is continuing to produce methane. And when we're talking about the production of methane, you can see these are actual measurements by the UN, and we can see that there is a continuous increase in the amount of methane that we produce. And if we extrapolate to 2040, 2050, we see that the amount of methane will continue, if we continue in this manner, to increase and to be emitted to the atmosphere. And here you see the areas or the countries that are the main producers of methane due to ruminant production. By the way, in previous years, China was a bit more blue. Blue means that they produce less methane. Red means that they produce more and more methane. China, due to a decision by the party to start providing each house with milk, they started growing intensively cows, so they're continuing to increase from blue to red, and this pushes the amount of methane that we emit to the atmosphere tremendously. About 20 to 25% of the methane that is emitted to the atmosphere is attributed to ruminants. And now I will remedy a current belief, I think, for most people, cows do not produce, or they do not produce the methane. The methane is not being emitted to the atmosphere through their lower digestive tract, but it is produced and emitted to the atmosphere by the upper digestive tract, because I told you the rumen resides at the upper digestive tract. Or in other words, cows, 95% of the methane that is emitted to the atmosphere is emitted due to barbs by cows. So what can we do about it? We know that we need to feed humanity. We need to produce milk to humanity. And at the same time, we understand that this process, this microbial process that allows it, has this shortcoming of producing methane and emitting it to the atmosphere. In the atmosphere, as I said before, methane is very good in trapping heat inside our planet. It traps heat 28 times more than, for example, CO2. Therefore, it contributes to the warming of our planet 25 more than CO2. There are some people that would say even 80 times more. So this is a target to actually reduce methane emissions. On the good side, or one of the good sides about it, is that methane is being, its half-lifetime is very short in the atmosphere, about 10 years. So we have a good perspective or a good notion here, where if we reduce the amount of methane that is being emitted to the atmosphere, we have there is a good chance that in 10 years time the amount of in the atmosphere will be actually reduced because it's being degraded in the atmosphere. So as I asked or said, what can we do about that? So now I will expose you to some of our research that can actually contribute to these notions. Back in 2016, we published an article that showed that even in the same farm, cows that eat exactly the same diet, let's say that this, I don't know, figures over here are exactly the same diets, the same amount itself, would have different microbiomes. Not because they're eating different feeds, they're having the same exact diet, they will have different microbiomes. And one type of a microbiome will produce a lot of the metabolites that the cows can utilize in order to produce a lot of milk. On the other way, we would have cows, the same breed, exactly the same diet, that would have a totally different microbiome that will produce a lot of metabolites that the cows cannot easily utilize, like, for example, methane that is not being absorbed or utilized by the cow and is emitted to the atmosphere, and therefore they will produce less milk and at the same time more methane. So we have efficient cows, efficient from the point of view of utilizing the diet, that will take the same amount of feed and produce more milk and less methane, and other types of cows that will take the same amount of feed and produce more methane and less milk. And this is this paper, we actually pinpointed specific microbial compositions that can tell us which will produce high or low amounts of methane and at the same time produce more or less milk respectively. Moreover, the differences are extreme. So we could find in the same farm cows that will produce 100 grams in a day of methane per day. And at the same farm, we could find cows that will produce 500 grams of methane per cow in a day. So we would have two different cows, one that will produce 100 grams of methane per day, and another one that will produce 500 grams of methane per day. And the question is whether we can actually tip the scales between microbial compositions that are now featured here or projected here as a landscape that produce high amounts of methane because they have specific groups of microbes that we call functional groups that will produce a lot of methane and less milk, and whether we can tip the scales towards microbial composition that will have groups of microbes that will produce less methane and more valuable energy tokens that the cows can actually eat. And I will give you 2 or 3 perspectives from our point of view and pinpoint at the end how are we going to approach them. One thing is to ask whether the environment, and in this case is the host environment, which is the cow itself, could change the composition of the microbiome. In other words, does the genetics of the cow can affect the composition of the microbiome? And here we used studies that started in Israel, and then we started looking worldwide on cows, about 1,000 cows that span across Europe and Israel. And we asked whether the composition of the microbiome, are there specific microbes that are connected to the genetics of the cows, and whether we can actually affect them. And we found this is a network of microbes, how they interact with each other. Each node here is one microbe, and an edge would connect two different microbes inside the cow's rumen, or where in the gut of the cow. And in circles, you see usual microbes, and in squares, those are microbes that we found to be connected to the genetics of the cow. And these microbes are central in the networks of interactions of the cow, which means that if we affect these microbes that we call heritable microbes, because they are connected to the genetics, if we affect them, we can affect the overall composition of the rumen microbiome. So if we target these specific microbes, we can actually modulate the cow microbiome towards low methane emitting state, as we call it. Another notion that could help us modulate the rumen microbiome, and this is where this the approach that we're taking with the Climate Solution Prize is directed, is what we call microbial assembly process. So like any other system, the rumen microbiome, the composition of the different species inside the cow's gut, goes through assembly process. Just to wrap our heads around it, we can look at a forest, and we know that each forest is starting as, just exposed rocks that are afterwards some grass is growing on it, and then we have shrubs, then we have small trees or young forest, and at the end of the day, we get into a whole mature forest that we call climax forest. So if we change the initial grass or weeds that are growing at the beginning, we know that we might change the composition of the adult forest. Why? Because this process, this stepwise process in which we know which type of communities of plants are occurring in each step, it has dependency in it. Why? Because these shrubs are dependent on the type of plants that grew before them. Exactly as you see in the gardens that you grow, or in every plant that you will grow, if you change the type of soil, or the type of shrubs, or the type of plants that grew there at the beginning, you might change the ability of the plant that you're trying to grow to actually grow. So the same notions exist in microbial communities. This process, this stepwise process that has dependency on the previous step, exists in microbial communities. And we wanted to see whether we can actually use this process in order to modulate the composition of the microbiome. And what we did is we kind of follow the assembly process of the rumen microbiome across 3 years in cows or milking cows in Israel, 50 milking cows. And what we did is we changed the initial stage of the composition of the microbiome by delivering some of the calves in C-section versus the ones that were born in natural birth, or through the birth canal. And we asked whether we see a succession process, and whether this succession process is modulated as a function of the delivery mode. The reason for that is that the ones that are born in C-section are not exposed to the initial birth canal microbiome. Therefore, they have a different starting point. And we asked whether this different starting point kind of echoes in time and is changing the composition of the microbiome. So let's look at the results, then discuss for 2 or 3 minutes what we're going to do in this graph. So what the first step was to actually understand that exactly as we see in a forest, we see the same processes that are occurring in the rumen microbiome. Here, each column over here is a specific cow in which we measured the existence of this blue microbe from the family Bacteroideaceae, versus the brown columns, which is coming from the Prevotalaceae family. These names don't mean a lot, I know, to you guys, but it means that in all cows, each column is one cow in which we measure the blue microbe. In all cows, there is a decrease or an increase in the blue microbe in a very synchronous manner. And at the same time, we see an increase at the other microbe, which is painted here in brown. The same happens with other microbes. So we see a very continuous and very deterministic process in which in all cows, we see the same microbes increase or decrease in time, and this suggests that we can actually intervene in this process. And indeed, the cows that were born in C-section, they had a different microbiome from the ones that were born in vaginal delivery. On the y-axis, you see the time, and on the on the x-axis, you see the time, and on the y-axis, you see the different types of microbes. And you can see that in the C-section, we see invasion of different microbes compared to the vaginal delivery. The C-section, we see a faster invasion because it's a more empty environment. And when we compare it to the vaginal delivery, we see different composition of microbes that are invading the system. And this is not excluded to the first days of life. It's kind of existing throughout life, meaning that this initial step in which we change the initial microbiome allowed us to modulate the microbiome itself of adult cows. This also allowed us to develop algorithms to actually predict the assembly process of the microbiome. So what do we do with these notions? And what are the tools that we're using? So in order now, what we need to understand now is that we actually prove that the rumen microbiome could be modulated by introducing different composition of the microbiome. Now we just need to understand which ones we're introducing and towards which direction they will actually push the rumen ecosystem. In order to do that, in this grant, we're essentially trying to look at this data that I showed you and other data which looks at the development of the microbiome using metabolomics, which is the ability to measure the function of the microbes like producing methane. Metagenomics is kind of looking at the overall microbiome using very broad bioinformatic pipelines that we have in the lab. And then to isolate the specific components, this is how we grow these microbes. They are growing in an anaerobic environment exactly. This is my lab, exactly as they would grow in the cow. This is the same environment. We have automatic systems to allow that. And then after composing or creating these communities, we're transplanting them in a germ-free ruminant animals. These are sheep, and measuring the amount of methane that they produce. The ones that produce the less amounts but still maintain high feed efficiency are essentially a solution because they provide farmers and humanity with the ability to still produce the same amount of milk, but they reduce the amount of methane that is being emitted to the atmosphere, which is extremely important for us. So we are using a top-down approach where we identify the components, then we pinpoint them and we grow them and we select them in the lab, creating different community composition, measuring this on the animals themselves. The ones that are reducing the amount of methane are the ones that we go forward with in order to actually commercialize it and provide a solution for humanity. So just to summarize, we started by understanding how to tip the scales. I showed you that genetics is one approach that we're taking. Then we spent some time on understanding how this succession process can allow us to modulate the rumen microbiome. And with this, I will say again, thank you to my group, a lot of the funding agencies, and specifically to JNF and the Climate Solution Prize. So now I'm good to take questions, and thank you for listening.
Thank you, Professor Mizrahi. I'm going to actually just stop your share so I can see you. Okay. A lot of words were used, kept up with it. Thank you for addressing it the way you did. I actually got a question a couple of days ago when I was speaking to one of our upcoming speakers for the Climate Solutions Festival, and I was telling her about your work. And her question was, how does this, if at all, affect the cows from a humanity standpoint? Oh, you're on mute. Let's unmute you. Nope. There you go.
Okay, so thank you very much, Phil, for this question, because it's extremely important when we are healthcare driven from this perspective. So as I just mentioned, this microbial compositions are actually existing and prominent in nature. Nature is, we can call farms nature, but we see them inside normal cows that are living in every farm. And we transpire just to push more cows to actually have this specific microbiomes that will enable them to reduce the amount of methane that they emit to the atmosphere. But in other words, these are cows that are normal. They're very healthy, and they live their normal life as cows. So this is a natural solution that exists in nature. We're not trying to impose something that we invented. We just want to increase the amount of cows that actually having this composition.
As a follow-up to that, another question was, I have 2 young children. My children drink a ton of milk. As you said, milk consumption is constantly going up. I'm to blame for that one. What would you tell parents, families who are feeding their children, families, meat, milk, if they're hesitant about now we're changing the microbiome of a cow, to tell them it's not going to affect the quality of what you're consuming?
No, even if it will do something, it will improve it, and I will explain why. As I just said, these are cows that are normal and living in farms in Canada, the US, or Europe. They have a specific microbiome that instead of producing a lot of methane, it produces a lot of the compounds that are being used to produce the milk. So, for example, this milk will have more protein inside. And so from this perspective, you'll get high quality milk.
We have one question we've asked all other winners from the inaugural prize. So I'm going to put it out there for you. No crystal ball. No one's holding you accountable for the answer. At what point, how far from now, and how likely do you see this commercializing?
That's good. So if this is the case, you can stop recording. No, I'm joking. So I would say 5 to 6 years. I think that we would have something tangible that could be commercialized. Not a company, but something that we can push forward. Yeah, that's where I want to be. Yeah.
So then I guess the follow-up to that would be, over the next 5 to 7 years, what can farmers do to somewhat improve the situation while you and your team are working to come up with a more concrete long-term solution?
So that's a very good question. As I said, we're working from different directions on this specific problem. And we already have notions in which we can actually detect and predict how the microbiome will affect the amount of methane that is being emitted. And we have now, you asked about commercialization. So this year, we wrote several patents, 4 or 5 of them on actually modulating the microbiome from a different direction. And we opened Ruminera. It's a company that will allow farmers to better, let's say, manage their farms towards a more green future in this context, emit less methane. So we're working on this in parallel. Yeah.
So another question we just got that came through is, while other people are always looking for a way to help the environment, the veggie meat, the Beyond Meat industry has really exploded over the last couple of years. Oat and almond milk, etc. And with great research on this in Israel, do we expect the number of cows and sheep to diminish if these industries continue to increase?
Yeah, so as a scientist, I always believe in multiple solutions, or at least a suggestion for solutions in order to tackle a problem. But in every estimate that we're looking at, even in very, very extreme scenarios, we don't see this industries going more than 5 to 10% in the coming 10 years if they will actually become tangible. So it means that most of the world will continue to actually consuming milk in the coming future. So it means that it will be neglectable on the amount of cows that exist on planet Earth for now. So this is why we're so driven, because I don't know how many people are with us right now. The shit will hit the fan in 50 years if we won't do anything with that. So we don't have the time and the let's say, privileged not to do anything with the cows.
I'll make sure when we post the recording online, we list it as not
You
for
need to
children.
take out. You need to take it out.
For those of us who don't know, you've actually made several discoveries in the past that have earned you bacterial species named after yourself. Quite accomplished. What would you say to younger aspiring students, young researchers, to pursue a career in a environmentally focused area of research?
First, do that. But the most important thing is that you need to set aims and goals that would, to most people, will not seem achievable. And if most people tell you that it's not achievable, you're most probably on the right track. So just identify a problem that can be a quest for you for life. And that's what I would do.
So back on March 1st, 2022, the Climate Solutions Prize was launched in Israel at the Perez Center. There was a full day-long event, and the competitions opened. I actually remember when you applied because I remember answering a couple of your emails that I found recently. You started filling out the application. Did you think that you would be on stage on October 26th at the Hulda Valley accepting the inaugural award? Be modest.
So, yeah. So, as I just said, this seemed like a very competitive and very, very high goal, but this drives me. So I'm just doing whatever I can. So I'm not saying whether I will be able to do that or not, just giving it a very, let's say, good fight, or like putting the effort in and hoping for the best. This is science for you. So, yeah, so I knew that it's highly competitive, but it was for me something that was worth putting effort into.
It was, and I remember coming down to the wire. I actually got the email from the judging committee the night before we made our way to the Hulda, saying that they finally narrowed it down, but because it was so tight, there will be 3 inaugural winners on this year.
Yes, I remember. Yeah.
So you mentioned earlier Jeff Hart, the executive chair of the Climate Solutions Prize, and Galit Levy, the chief CSP officer, are not here today. They're in Israel. And they're actually meeting with our partners, JNF's partners in Israel, to discuss the upcoming launch of a prize and upcoming festival, because we're doing it all over again, as we promised, for many years to come. What would you say to us, JNF Canada, those here with us, those watching the recording, the Climate Solutions Prize, what can we do to further and encourage young students, young people, the next generation, to make a difference?
So I think actually I was pretty amazed by the fact that you actually had this initiative. Usually it's being taken by governments. So I think that what you're doing is amazing for now, and maybe including younger scientists, as you just said, having a portion, just competition for younger scientists, either bachelor, master's, or PhD, so they will know that somebody cares, except the universities. This is amazing, the stuff that you're doing. So this is the only thing that I would approach the younger generation.
We actually just launched a few weeks ago locally in Montreal, in Quebec, a student entrepreneur innovation prize.
That's amazing.
For students working under researchers to apply for a $90,000 grant. So
that's amazing.
We've heard it. We moved on it.
That's amazing.
We're coming towards that part of the talk. So if there's any more questions, please type them through. We'll try to address them before we say our goodbyes. What inspired you to focus in Israel when we JNF decided to create the Climate Solutions Prize? As I said earlier, it was to galvanize the best and brightest minds of Israel. Now, in the past, those minds were typically geared towards cybersecurity, medicine, fintech. What inspired you to say to yourself, I'm going into environmental studies?
So that's a very, I will try to answer it in 2 minutes. A very elaborated answer to a very important and simple question. So It started as a kind of serendipity. Like I'm a curious guy, and during my PhD, I studied things that were extremely interesting for me, but I could never keep somebody not falling asleep, even people from my own field when I was describing this. Then I got into kind of studying the microbial communities, and I realized that it has a huge environmental impact. And when these first findings that I just showed you that stem from just curiosity came, we understood that we need to do something with that, because as I just said, climate change is actually happening, and we need to take a stand, and you need to do something where you can, and you guys are doing what you're doing, and it's amazing. From my point of view, it's something that you cannot ignore anymore. So inspired, you can call it inspired, you can call it a call. Like, you need to do what you can in order to help. And I think that for now, this is the biggest challenge for humanity, more than anything else, anything that you can think of.
And I guess the last question, and we joked about this earlier, but it is true. Whenever we talk to people about the Climate Solutions Prize and all the winners that have come, the famous line I always receive is, what's the update on the cow fart guy?
Yeah, I know.
You put the myth behind us earlier.
Yeah, so you want me to repeat it? Yeah.
Are you the cow fart guy? I guess.
I got it. Yeah. I was trying to kind of see it throughout the presentation. So as I said to you on our conversation before, 95% of the methane that is emitted to the atmosphere is not being farted. It doesn't come from the lower digestive tract, it comes from the upper digestive tract. It's being barked. So 95% is being barked and going to the atmosphere because the rumen exists in the esophagus, the upper part of the digestive tract. So you can call me the barb guy from now on.
So cows, just like older Jewish men after a holiday dinner, need to take some time to cleanse.
Exactly. That's exactly what happens. Yeah, they do it a lot throughout the day, but yes. So it's the barb guy from now on, and I'm okay.
It's been a pleasure having you here with us today. We're pulling for you. Your credentials, they speak for themselves. We only wish you the best. We can't wait to come back to Israel. For those of you who don't know, Professor Mizrahi has won 2 prestigious awards, the European Research Council grants, and both starting and consolidated grants. He also serves as a senior editor of journals in the fields of microbial ecology, such as ISME Communications. At the national level, Itzhak serves as an Israeli ambassador of the International Society of Microbial Ecology, where he promotes and strengthens the disciplines of microbial ecology as broadly as possible. It's been a pleasure having you here. We thank you. We wish you nothing but the best. And before we say goodbye today, I'd like to introduce everybody to Mo Liebman, the president of JNF Quebec.
Thank you so much for that very interesting presentation. Sorry Phil derailed it about the cow fart guy, but I don't agree. I think you're an exceptional person and a real inspiration. So thank you so much. Yes, as the president of JNF Quebec, I invite you all to get more involved with JNF. Go to your local websites and jnf.ca and your local chapters. A lot of exciting events coming up. So, if you want to get involved, there's no better time now. We need all the involvement and all the support as we can get. And I wish you guys a great day. And thank you again for being here.
As we mentioned earlier, the Climate Solutions Prize is powered by JNF, and it is one of JNF's largest initiatives. JNF is so much more than that. Let's take a moment before we say goodbye to see all the great work that JNF is currently up to.
Together with JNF Canada, we're able to conserve the historical heritage of Bet Eshel.
Together with JNF Canada, we build a village for autistic people to live safely and independently.
Together with JNF Canada, we have created a physical activity program to help children with chronic diseases and disabilities.
Together with JNF Canada, we're expanding our facilities to enhance the vital work being done here at the Dr. Dalit After School Center.
Together with JNF Canada, we are building an international pediatric cardiac center and children's hospital for children from Israel and from all around the world.
Together with JNF Canada, we're going to build a new activity center that will help the needs of teens, children, and young adults of the Negev.
Together with JNF Canada, we're addressing the urgent need for mental health care in our psychiatric clinic and psychotrauma center.
Together with JNF Canada, we are restoring and rehabilitating Ben Shaman's forest.
Together with JNF Canada, we're enhancing the lives of the community.
Together with JNF Canada, we've built a safe haven for girls with severe disabilities and complex medical conditions.
Together with JNF Canada, we're building a beautiful foster home for the children in Israel. This is the place, beautiful, look.
More information on how you can get involved, visit jnf.ca to find out all the different opportunities JNF has to offer. Events like today don't just happen on their own. We'd like to thank Ben Gurion University, Canadian Ben Gurion University. Visit their website, as we mentioned earlier, for all information on them. Simon Ben Simon, Executive Director at the Canadian Friends of Ben Gurion University, thank you for your participation. And to stay up to date on everything to do with the Climate Solutions Prize and our upcoming competitions and events, visit the climatesolutionsprize.com. We hope to see you all at the Climate Solutions Festival taking place in Montreal on May 23rd and 24th of this summer at the Grand Quai Old Port of Montreal. You can visit our website, climatesolutionsprize.com, for all information on how to register for that in-person event. Thank you all for joining us today. Today's recording is being recorded and will be posted online. So if you'd like to share with your friends, family, please feel free to do so. You can find it again at the climatesolutionsprize.com website. Thank you, Professor Mizrahi. Thank you all for joining us, and we hope to see you all soon. Take care.